There are different stages in the development of a company similar to any person's life. When the company is in its nascent stages, having just taken birth, it is surrounded by, that is, the founders raise money from their friends and family. And there are some other investors called angel investors as well who invest at this stage. This stage is called the pre-seed and seed funding. That is, all these people help you sow the seeds of your business. The term angel is said to have origins from Broadway theaters where patrons sponsored plays. These investors can invest in companies merely on the idea of the founder itself. That is, even before there is a MVP or a minimum viable product which is available for the company to sell in the market.
Like how did Ola happen?
और जिस हिसाब से हमारा काम हो रहा था मुझे लगने लगा बॉस सब काम खुद तो नहीं कर सकते हैं. And there are a lot of people building interesting companies, तो angel investing शुरू करते हैं. तो 2011 somebody introduced me saying that ये company को देखो. He is starting a company where you can order a taxi on your phone. तो I said ये तो धंधा बेकार है क्योंकि हम बम्बई के बिगड़े हुए लोग हैं और मैं न्यूयॉर्क में रहा था तो वहाँ पे टैक्सी तो जहाँ देखो आप निकलो मिलती है. बॉम्बे में भी यही हाल है. तो I said why the hell is somebody going to order a phone cab on a phone? तो I dismissed it. Serendipity बोलिए कुछ भी बोलिए. I happened to go to Delhi for a work trip. वहाँ पे साली टैक्सी नहीं मिली. वहाँ पे टैक्सी स्टैंड को फ़ोन करना पड़ता था.
हाँ.
तो ऐसे अरे यार ये तो इंटरेस्टिंग हो सकता है.
In India, funds who invest in the initial stages of a startup are Titan Capital, which is run by Mr. Kunal Behl, who founded Snapdeal, an e-commerce platform, and InfoEdge or Naukri.com, which is run by Mr. Sanjeev Bigchandani, who has invested in companies like Zomato and Policy Bazaar in their nascent stages. So this is the first stage where the company needs an investment. After the product enters the initial development stage, that is when the MVP or the basic product or service is ready, the venture capitalists enter. They invest to help with the go-to-market strategies, which means that once the product is ready, how to launch that product, where to sell the product, how to market it, etc. India's biggest venture capital funds are Blume Ventures, which publishes the Indus Valley Report and has invested in companies like Cashify and Unacademy. And another big investor at this stage is Accel Ventures, which invested in Flipkart, Swiggy, and Myntra. This is the second stage of investment. Now, the third type of investors who come in are the private equity investors. They invest in mature companies or startups right before their IPOs, the main objective being scaling the company or replacing some ailing company. Thereafter, they take the company to its IPO or sell it to another private equity or other big investor. Two really big private equity players operating in India are number one, Sequoia, which has globally invested in companies like Google, Facebook, and WhatsApp. And in India, it has invested in big companies like Oyo, Practo, Car Dekho, and Byju's. These investors help in raising early growth capital and help in acquiring companies. For example, in Byju's case, the private equity money helped Byju's acquire multiple companies in its later stages like Topper, Akash, White Hat Jr., etc. Second firm, which is an example of a private equity player operating in India, is KKR. Now, KKR is a global firm. It stands for Kohlberg, Kravis and Roberts. They have acquired companies in the healthcare sector a lot. Example, hospital chains like Healthcare Global Enterprises, which it acquired in 2025 from CVC Partners, and Max Healthcare hospital chains as well. On the consumer side also, they have invested in companies like Lenskart. Now, a fun fact, CVC Partners, which is another private equity player, also owns 33% of Gujarat Titans. Now, once you have seen the investments, the kind of companies these investors have invested in, you come to realize that a lot of the products and services that we are consuming right now, there is some role that these investors have played in scaling these companies up, marketing it to us, and providing us those goods and services. Okay, so why are the firms doing so well recently? Why is there a huge rise in private equity and venture capital investment? Here is a statistic for you which will put it in perspective. In 1996, about 8,000 firms were listed in the US stock market. Now the economy, population, everything has grown, and yet today the number of American public companies stands at around 4,000. Why has that happened? Why have the listed companies reduced by half? Why are these companies going private? Is it just a trend in the US? Not really. So basically, when a company is public, it needs to give out disclosures, it is eyed by the media, investors, and regulators. There are multiple costs involved in that as well. However, when the company goes private, a large part of that problem is solved and they just want to focus on getting profitability and operating the company as efficiently as possible. So they focus on measures like cutting costs, saving time in compliance, etc. It is simple capitalism, it's nothing else at play, it is profit maximization. But how does it impact the world? Now, there are pros and cons to a private equity or a venture capital investment. There are companies or case studies like Crompton Greaves Electricals in India, which turned around magnificently due to a private equity investment. They brought in Mr. Shantanu Khosla, who had performed incredibly well. He brought efficiency in the company, turned it around, and made it profitable. However, there is a flip side to this argument as well, that if profit is the sole objective, there are layoffs, the investors will deploy strategies like aggressive cost cutting, forcing founders to meet targets and keep on growing. Some of these measures are required to make companies lean, but at some other times, the companies themselves have fully shut down. So it's a double-edged sword. However, these investors have certainly brought in a lot of efficiency in the market.